Hello, little Vickies. Welcome back to my channel. Tonight I'll be sharing 2 no-sleep stories from Reddit. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and turn the notification bell on so you can be notified every time a new video uploads. If you have a story of your own you'd like to share and possibly have read on the channel, send it to veronica45stories@gmail.com. Link is also in the description. Now it's time to relax and get on with the stories. The pool complex I work at is pretty typical, if rather large. It's not in the center of the city, it's closer to the edge, and as such has loads of space to work with. There are gyms and courts and several large pools that it's comprised of, all interconnected with warm and pleasantly humid plexiglass tunnels, extra appreciated at this time of year. Sometimes, as I'm walking through one such tunnel in my shorts, sandals, and lifeguard shirt, I'll catch a glimpse of someone outside, shivering through their coats in the snow, and I can't help but feel relieved to be on this side of the glass. My boss is an eccentric lady, the manager. She laughs and smiles a lot, but damn if she doesn't always look so tired. It's like I can see the stress aging her in actual real time. She needs to take it a little easier, is what I think. We're just leisure facility workers, after all. I consider telling her this in a meeting she's called me into. I'm not concerned. We get on well, and I'm a good employee. I try to think of a diplomatic way to word my sentiments, but she begins to speak before I have a chance. "How long have you been working here now, Dan?" she asks me, tapping a finger against the desk. "About a year, I think," I reply, and there is a pause. I can't quite put my finger on it, but something suddenly changes. The atmosphere becomes a little more strained, a little more tense. I shift uncomfortably. Kate, my boss, glances up from the desk and over my shoulder. I turn around to see one of my colleagues behind me through the open doorway. Nice guy. He's been here longer than me, I think. But the moment my eyes meet his, he turns away and heads off and away out of sight. I look back to Kate, and the silence stretches on. I manage an awkward laugh, but she does not smile with me now. "Employees that have been with us for as long as you have, Dan, are given the opportunity to earn a little extra money." "Ah, okay," I reply, eyebrows raised. She rubs her wrist absent-mindedly, running a thumb over the V she has tattooed there as she looks at the wall in thought. "We run night sessions here sometimes. Did you know that?" she says, still not looking directly at me. "For real?" I ponder this. No, I didn't know. Is this a recent thing?" "No," she replies, and does not elaborate any further. More silence. I shift with discomfort in my seat. The air is, as it always is in the complex, humid, but goosebumps shoot across my arms regardless. "Kate, is everything okay?" She rises from her chair. "Come with me, please." Silently I stand, and I follow on beside her as we walk through the complex. The complex stays open pretty late into the night, for the gyms at least, but the pools will be closing in about 10 minutes. It's dark, and aside from the falling snow, I cannot see much of anything beyond the glass when we pass through the tunnels. "Dan, once employees have been with us for a year, then their hours get reduced somewhat." I start to protest with surprise, but she quiets me. "Don't panic, your pay remains the same. It goes up, actually, but once a week we'll need you to spend a few hours in the night pool." I try to process this. A few hours at night? Why haven't I heard anything about this? "As I said, just once a week." She leads me down corridor after corridor, through a set of locker rooms and past our least popular pool. Nothing wrong with the pool itself, it's just an unusual shape and a little further out of the way than the other 3. Kate leads me through one of the doors at the back, past steaming pipes and whirring filters. Round a corner we go, beneath a blinking emergency exit sign, and I find myself starting to get a little anxious. My gut is telling me something, but I don't know how to respond. So this is the way to the night pool then? I ask. That's right, she says quietly. A pool that I didn't know about until just now for a session I didn't know even existed. Kate says nothing. And we find ourselves at the top of a tiled staircase, one that leads down and down into the humid gloom. Kate wavers on the top step. She grips tight to the metal rail. Then, with a slow sigh, she descends, and against my better judgment, I follow. Down into the dark. Kate's sandals clack against the tile as we go down, and mine echo softly behind as I follow. This is pretty creepy, you know, I say with a weak chuckle, but again I receive no reply. My breathing becomes shallow. Kate, I say to nothing. God damn it. Kate! I'm sorry about this, Dan, she mutters. I'm sorry, all right, but this is what we need from you. And we arrive at last at the base of the stairs before an open tiled arch in the wall. The world beyond is red, low, gloomy red, as the room is awash in nothing but red light. Jesus, I murmur in disbelief, stepping forward. And together with Kate, we head through this into secretive underground pool. A deep, soft humming sound rumbles overhead through the pipework. Water drips from somewhere unseen. I look around and try to take it all in. There stands a lone lifeguard chair by the edge of the pool. There are some lockers against one wall, and as for the pool itself, the pool is rectangular, as one would expect, and the water is dark, black almost in this light. But the most curious part are the 7 rivers. The pool, despite at its core looking much the same as any other, has 7 off-shooting waterways. They stretch off and away through gaps in the tiled walls, through watery tunnels leading away into the dark. Kate, come on, what is this place? Kate grabs me suddenly by the shoulders, and I swear in alarm, heart pounding in fear. Dan, she says, her eyes staring desperately into mine. Just do your job. Just for 2 hours, just sit in that chair and do your job. You must. You hear me? You must. And she speaks with such cold conviction, such force of will that I cannot help but be swayed, to believe in what she is saying. So I just sit there and what? And do your job, she says again, releasing me. She is shaking. 2 hours tonight. Then next week I'll need you to do 2 more. You'll have greater flexibility with your daytime hours, and you won't need to come in quite so much either. Thank you. I'll be upstairs if you need me. Wait, that's it? You want me down here right now? Alone? Kate looks away and wipes her eyes. She starts to walk back to the arch. Kate, wait, is this a joke? A prank? She shoots a look back at me over her shoulder. Her expression makes it very clear that this is no joke. 2 hours, Dan, she says as the pipes hiss and the filter hungrily gurgles in the room. Just 2 hours. Then I'll see you upstairs and you can go home. And with that she departs, leaving me alone with the underground pool bathed in red. I stand there for a minute, just gobsmacked, unsure what to do. This is insane. This creepy-ass pool, all empty and alone down here in the darkness. I look around once again at the 7 tunnels. Where the fuck do those even lead? I wonder aloud. I look over to the lifeguard chair, a still and silent sentinel above the dark water, and I glance to my watch. 2 hours. She wants you down here for 2 hours. I wander over to the chair, my footsteps suddenly sounding much louder in the eerie quiet. The water laps and churns softly against the rim of the pool near my feet. This is crazy. This must be a joke, surely. I should just go back upstairs and refuse. But I don't. Something about Kate's manner really frightened me. So I'll just do it this once, see what the big deal is, and then make a decision from there. So I clamber up into the lifeguard chair and settle myself into place. the lone watcher over a sea of black and red. The water churns, the humidity pinpricks my skin with sweat, and I watch. I watch the water, as is my duty. Nothing happens, by the way, not this first time. I start to feel a little queasy as the hours draw to a close, but I put that down to just a little dehydration. And when my time finally is done, I jump from the chair and hasten away, not wishing to spend an extra second in this unsettling place. Kate is gone by the time I return upstairs and through the complex to her office, so I simply go home and bring it up with her the following day. Kate, I tell her, I don't want to do this. You can keep the pay and the flexible hours, just don't send me back down there again. Dan, I'm not going to discuss this with you again. I'm sorry, but this is just the way it is. Kate, look, it creeps me out, all right? You will go down again. No, I won't. Yes, she shouts. You will. Slamming a hand down onto her desk, and silence falls in the immediate area. She pauses, then bursts into tears with her face in her hands. I don't bother saying anything further. I just walk out. What is there to say? I speak to one of my colleagues a little later that day, a guy called Rex. I ask him about the pool and if he has any answers for me. You just have to do it, he mutters, eyes downcast. If you don't, then it'll fall to somebody else, right? How long has Francesca been working here? You like her, right? I shudder in reply. I don't know about that. How long has she been here now, man? Well, about 11 months, I guess. 11 months. Yeah, that's right. Rex doesn't say another word. He just rubs his wrist in thought. I look down and make the connection for the first real time that it's in the exact same place as Kate's. It's of 3 eyes positioned next to each other. 1, 2, 3. I mean to ask him about it, but he just claps me on the back and strides away. So a week passes. And I find myself again at the top of those gloomy stairs, the ones descending down into the red shade. I scratch my arm in thought, paused, considering. Is my job really worth it? I think to myself. Is it worth it to go back down to that awful place? You're joking, right? Comes the rebuttal. It's 2 hours of sitting on your ass. 2 hours and you get to keep one of the best jobs you've ever had. You like it here. You've just been given a raise. It's 2 hours in a red room. Man up and get the fuck down. Fine, I think to myself, steadily descending the tiled stairs. But there's something else going on here. Something not right, and I'll find out what it is. Kate barely looks me in the eye these days. Something seriously up with her, and it's scaring me. I take a deep breath as the levels of light lower and shift to a more total foreboding red. I step down onto the damp tiled floor of the lowermost level and walk cautiously through the arch and into the pool room. As before, entirely empty. One pool with 7 off-shooting rivers that run through tunnels in the tile leading away through the dark, and the lifeguard chair waiting patiently for my arrival. I head over and climb on up, sitting with a small sigh and my hands clasped as I look out over the face of the water. Dark, black. It swallows the feeble red light and softly churns, demanding more, perhaps. I stare at the water, waiting and willing the time to go faster until I zone out. Movement. I am shocked from my careless dozing by what I assume to be moving in the water. In a panic, I grip the sides of the chair and lean forward, eyes wide and staring at the very center of the pool. My heartbeat suddenly rapid and painful. I wait and I watch, waiting for confirmation of what it is that I saw, hoping beyond hope that it was nothing more than my imagination. I stare at that spot in the pool for a minute or more, and just as my heart is beginning to slow and I'm allowing myself to relax, I see it again. It's subtle, but it's there. A small splash in the water, a ripple, a churn. Fuck, I mumble, then a little louder. Shit. It's just the filter, perhaps, bubbling from the bottom of the pool? But as if in response to this thought, the splash comes again, and I watch in cold horror as the water rises and steam drifts from the pool's surface. A long, dark shape slithers its way through the red shadow towards me, then slinks back down and below to the deep. Fuck this. I have 10 minutes left on the clock by my count, but I'm done. I'm out. I leap from the lifeguard chair and stagger my way across the slippery poolside tile, back through the arch to the steamy underground back rooms and up the stairs and into the complex, racing through corridor after corridor. Kate is still here tonight, it seems. I find upon my arrival at her office, face red and breath shallow. "What the hell is this, Kate?" I shout at her. Tell me what the fuck is going on." "You think I wanted this?" she mutters in a low voice, leaning forward. She doesn't seem surprised by my outburst in the slightest. "You think I wanted to be a part of this hell, Dan?" She scratches at the V tattoo she has on her wrist. "We do our duty as lifeguards." "As lifeguards?" I allow myself to laugh and throw out my hands. "This is insane. Tell me, Kate, what exactly is in the pool below our complex?" She looks at me, then she looks at her watch. "You left your position early," she says. "No one is watching the pool." "No one is watching the—" I begin, incredulous, then I stop, close my eyes, and take a breath. "Kate," I say to her, "I quit." And without another word, I turn and stride from her office. I leave the complex behind, shivering in the snow, and despite how much I used to love my job, I intend never to return. I intend. That night I suffer from terrible, terrible nightmares. In them I find myself struggling to breathe, coughing and sputtering. My lungs fill up with putrid dark water as I scrabble for the surface that only ever gets further and further away. Its direction keeps changing, and I'm being watched. They're watching me through the water. I lose count of how many times I awake during the night, and by 5 a.m. I am too terrified to return to sleep. I spend the next day seeking new employment, but that night the dreams are the same, if not worse. The next night they come back, renewed, and the night after that. I find myself unable to stay awake during the day. The dreams find me at any hour. I'm too exhausted to cook proper meals. I stop trusting myself to drive my car. And when I can take it no more, I am right back in Kate's office, disheveled and desperate. I ask her, "How do I make them stop? How do I stop the dreams?" She stands and steps over to me. She draws me into a hug. "Just do your job," she says softly. "You're a lifeguard." Then, "I'm sorry, Dan. I'm so sorry. There is no other way." So I return to my job. Once a week, I do my shift in that awful, monstrous subterranean pool. Sometimes the water remains still. Sometimes the nights are entirely uneventful. And sometimes I see shapes slithering around in the darkness, disrupting the pool's surface, and my greatest fear remains that one day one of the things in the water is going to clamber up onto the tile, and I will not be able to summon the constitution to escape. The nightmares only come the night before my shift these days, and they are not as intense. But I can handle that. I can deal with it. They are only as heavy as is needed, I suppose, to remind me to do my duty, to do my job, to watch the water. Week after week, my duty goes on. How long do I have to do this? I ask Kate. I ask Rex. I ask the others who have been here longer than myself, but none of them give me an answer. And one day something happens that is worse than my greatest fear. Worse than one night of the things in the darkness climbing up into the light. And it's so predictable. I can't believe I didn't see it coming. So classically, painfully obvious that I consider myself an idiot for not preparing for it sooner. I am forced to do my job. my job as a lifeguard, because one terrible night I see a boy in the water. It begins as any other. I am uncomfortable and scared as I sit in my chair, as I watch the water quietly churn and listen to the pipes above me hiss and rumble. Perhaps it's going to be another quiet one, I hope, preemptively. Perhaps there will be no disturbances tonight. And that's when I see him. That's when I see the boy. A kid. A human boy just drifting through one of the tunnels, down one of the rivers and into the center of the pool, paddling and pulled along by an impossible current, one that I cannot see. "Help!" he cries out, and I can see the fear on his face washed in red. "Dad! Dad, where are you?" I cannot believe what I am seeing. "Hey!" I shout. Hey, kid, over here." But the boy does not react to my voice. He simply looks all around himself, spinning in a circle, calling out for his father. "Dad, where are you?" His voice echoes around the tiled walls as the deep red light shimmers across the face of the water. "Kid, hey, kid!" I try blowing my whistle. He does not react. I jump down from the chair to the tile and wave my arms, but the kid just can't see me. It's as if he's looking right through me when he turns my way, and the poor little lad starts to cough. He's swallowing mouthfuls of water, and he sputters and chokes. His strokes become more erratic as he keeps calling for help. He is drowning, and the only one who can help him is me. My blood runs cold as I see further disturbances in the water. At the far edges, dark and slithering shapes, and Kate's voice blares like a siren through my head. "Do your job. As a lifeguard, you must do your job." Time seems to slow a little. I watch as the boy starts struggling for real, as he begins to dip below the water, splashing and crying out for help. For help. But of course, I'm the only one who can hear him. I grit my teeth, with jaw set. My blood, once cold, now surging, fires me up with a blast of adrenaline. I take a long step forward, then another. It feels slow, but I am moving fast, I can tell. I follow procedure without even realizing. 3 quick blasts of the whistle, and I have shot myself forward from the edge of the pool. I am diving forward, leaping from the edge and out toward the darkness of the unknown. The boy is a few feet ahead. He draws closer and closer, and I hit the water with a great splash, and a rush of bubbles burst up past my ears. For a moment, trapped in time, I am adrift in the void, lost and alone in the watery darkness. The pool is impossibly, unfathomably deep. I cannot see the bottom. Something massive and slow lurks far below me, a shadow thing that writhes with motions like the waves of a dark sea against a bitter shore. And I know that whatever it is, it can see me. All around in the water, the slithery shapes draw closer. Time returns to its regular speed as I burst up for air and power through the darkness toward my target, toward the boy, lost, alone, and in need of help. "I've got you," I sputter as I shake off the void and grab him beneath the arms. Immediately turning, I power my way toward the edge with the boy trembling and shaking behind me. Arms and legs pumping as fast as I am able, though I cannot lose that terrible feeling of being flanked by the things in the water, getting closer and closer, closer and closer. I do not know what would happen if they were to reach me, but they do not. Not today, at least. I reach the edge, and with a roar of strength I bring round the boy, and holding him to my chest I clamber clumsily up and onto the side. I roll away from the edge of the pool, still clutching him as I try to put as much distance between us and the water as I am able. Shooting a look back reveals those menacing dark shapes slink quietly back into the depths, and I come to an exhausted halt, looking down at the boy and moving to help him sit up as I catch my breath. But there is no boy. Not anymore. Just a boy-sized shape comprised entirely of water. And the second that I comprehend this fact, the water acts as one would expect it to. It just melts right through my hands, splashing down across the tiles and washing over and away. A solid, and then, formless, gone. Still panting, I push myself up to the wall. I rest myself against it, soaked, and I just sit there for a while, processing. Trying to think, to put it all together, and failing. Feeling a subtle itch on my wrist, I look down, and there, forming before my eyes beneath the pool's red glow, is an eye. A dark, thin eye. It looks just like a tattoo. What does it mean? I ask Kate upon the completion of my shift. I stand before her bedraggled and afraid at the complex entrance. I had to rush out to catch her before she left. The snow barrels down and the Arctic wind burns my wet skin, but I don't care, not in this moment. The lights through the complex doors behind me send my shadow out long across the snow, and it illuminates Kate's face and shine in her eyes, eyes that look sadly back into mine. The wind sends the tails of her coat blowing out to one side. What does it mean? I shout above the gale, showing her my wrist, and she draws down her sleeve to reveal her own, the 5. 7 souls, she whispers, in a voice I can barely hear. 7 rivers, 7 tunnels, and 7 souls to be saved, and then we can be free. I don't understand. Kate, please. 7 souls, Daniel, she says as she looks back up at me, in a voice rich with sorrow, with apology, with warning, and with hope. Save 7 souls and your duty is done. We are the sentinels, and the lives are ours to guard. And without another word, she turns and walks away into the storm. The smell of freshly brewed coffee was strong in the air as I descended the stairs. I stretched languidly when I reached the bottom, my body still trying to wake up after a long, good night's sleep. "Good morning, all," I announced as I made my way into the kitchen. I gave my wife, Claire, a quick peck as I passed by the stove. "Dad!" my son squealed, hopping out of his chair and rushing over. That never got old. Luke was 4 and a firecracker. I lifted the boy off his feet and swung him around, much to the chagrin of his mother, who was trying to get him to settle down long enough to eat his Cheerios. Noticing Claire's harried expression, I quickly dropped Luke back into his little chair to finish his breakfast. "How'd you sleep, little man?" "Fine. Reggie came to see me last night." "Ah, yes. And how is fine Reginald doing these days?" I asked with mock seriousness. "His name is Reggie, Dad, not Reginald," Luke said, drawing out the last syllable as if the name Reginald was an absolutely absurd moniker. "Apologies. How is Reggie doing?" I responded, enunciating the name. My wife shot me a dark look. I knew I shouldn't encourage this new imaginary friend my son had concocted. Claire certainly did not approve. But I honestly couldn't see the harm in it. He was 4, after all. What 4-year-old hasn't had an imaginary friend? And as we had just moved into a new home in a new village, I think it's his way of coping with being in a strange place and settling in. The move to Castlewood was somewhat unexpected. My job had offered the chance of a transfer along with a sizable promotion. It was too good of a deal to pass up. The drawback was, of course, that the abrupt change had left very little time for my child and wife to acclimate to our new surroundings. "He's okay," Luke said. I glanced up at Luke. "Just okay? That's too bad. What did good old Reggie have to say?" "Nothing much," Luke said, slurping milk from his spoon. "Just stuff." "Just stuff," I parroted. "Yeah, he said he doesn't like you." I feigned distress. "No, Reggie, you wound me." I tickled Luke lightly, which resulted in a round of giggles. "Well, perhaps I can meet Reggie officially at your birthday party next weekend, and he will realize I'm not such a bad guy." My son laughed brightly and responded nonchalantly, "That's silly, Dad. Reggie can't come. He's dead." I heard the spatula my wife was holding clatter onto the stove. We both locked eyes. I paused for a beat before responding. You say Reggie is dead? I finally asked, looking back to my son. Sure, he's been dead for a long time, my son responded before spooning another mouthful of Cheerios into his mouth. Mom, can I go play out in the garden now? I've finished almost a whole bowl. Claire looked slightly distracted before she nodded slightly to Luke. Yes, but make sure to bring your bowl to the sink first. Yes, Mom, Luke shouted, already running his half-full bowl of cereal to the sink. He dashed out into the back garden without a second look back. I stared at his retreating figure. What do you think that was all about? I asked my wife. I don't know. Quite creepy, don't you think? She responded. Quite. I don't know how he could have concocted such a story, to be honest. Think there's something to it? Claire shot a look of disdain my way. Are you asking me if there is a ghost haunting our house and he visits our son at night? Really, John? What, you don't believe in ghosts? Of course not. It's a load of crap. Please don't tell me you actually believe in that nonsense. I don't know, I said with a look of contemplation. I think there is a lot in the universe that we don't understand. Who's to say there's not something after death? She turned back to my eggs she was still cooking. That's ridiculous, John. Anyway, as you've said before many times, it's just a harmless imaginary friend, right? She looked back over her shoulder at me. Right, I muttered, only half listening at this point. My mind was on other matters now. I stared out the window, watching Luke play in his sandbox. Maybe I should stay in Luke's room tonight. Check it out, make sure there's not some weirdo snaking into our son's room at night. Really? Don't you think that's a little overkill? What could it hurt? It's a Friday night. Mom would be happy to keep him for a sleepover. They can binge-watch Paw Patrol while she gorges him on popcorn and sugar cookies, and you can get a night to relax in the tub with a glass of wine and a good book. She tried to look annoyed, but I could tell she was intrigued by the idea. This is ridiculous, she says half-heartedly. Come on, a good soak and a night to yourself sounds pretty damn good. She rolls her eyes. I knew I'd won. Whatever, but if your mom is busy, it's off. Just as I had predicted, Mom was pleased as punch to take Luke for the night. She picked him up early that evening, and Claire and I enjoyed a lovely night of carry-out pizza and cheap wine. I sent her off to have her bubble bath while I watched some goofy alien show on the History Channel. By 11 o'clock, I found myself getting sleepy and ready to turn in. After changing into my PJs and brushing my teeth, I announced to my wife that I was off to commune with the dead in my hokiest, spooky voice. She was already in bed and engrossed in a paperback. Have fun, she muttered distractedly, blowing me a kiss. I left the warmth of our bedroom and shuffled down the hall into Luke's room. I flipped on the overhead light and looked around. The pale blue walls sported a large clown mural which stared back at me with a large toothy grin. I shuddered. Why, oh why did my wife decide on a carnival theme for his new room? There was nothing creepier than a clown, hands down. I walked over to Luke's tiny bed with his striped blue comforter. My feet would hang off the end, but I would survive. I crawled into bed and shut off the lamp that was shaped like an elephant. Darkness enveloped the room, save for a small nightlight in the corner shaped like a big top. The soft red light gave the clown a hellish glow. How had I not noticed how friggin' creepy this room could be at night? Turning away from the creepy-ass clown, I lay down and try to best slow my breathing and relax. I woke abruptly from a deep sleep to the sound of creaking. I had a moment of confusion as I tried to recognize my unfamiliar surroundings. Right, Luke's room. I rubbed the sleep out of my eyes and looked around, trying to locate the source of the noise. The closet door in the far right corner was ajar. Hadn't it been closed when I went to sleep? Luke's tiny backpack swung slightly from where it hung on the doorknob. Hello? I tentatively whispered. Is anyone there? Silence. I turned to my right and my gaze landed on the fucking clown. I really needed to talk to Claire about that. The nightlight still gave off that creepy red glow, making the room appear almost disorienting. I looked around the roof, noting the pile of stuffed animals in the corner and the bookcase by the door. "You're not Luke." My gaze whipped back over to the closet. The voice was so quiet I couldn't even be sure I had heard it. "Who's there?" I whispered to the closet. Again, silence met my query. I rubbed my eyes. This was ridiculous. What was I even doing in here? I was working myself up over nothing. I was a grown-ass man sleeping in a tiny bed next to arguably the creepiest fucking clown in the universe. I threw the covers back and was about to swing my legs over the side of the bed when I heard it again. "You're not Luke." I froze in place. There was no denying it this time. I had heard a voice coming from the closet. Slowly, as if it didn't really want to see me, I drug my gaze towards the dark closet in the corner. From the red glow of the nightlight, I saw a tiny, pale face. Only the top half of the face was visible. Large, dark orbs for eyes, a grayish-white forehead, and a matting of dark hair. The face stared at me from high up in the closet like it was some obscenely tall child standing just behind the wall. "What the fuck? Who are you?" I stammered. The face remained still. I realized the eyes had not yet blinked. "Are you Reggie?" I asked. At the sound of the name, the face abruptly disappeared, and I heard a scrabbling noise come from the closet. "Where is Luke?" The voice was louder and coarser this time, with Luke's name coming out gravelly and angry from the child. "He's not here," I said, glad to hear my voice steady this time. "What do you want?" There was silence for several seconds. Finally, the voice spoke, softer this time. "Want Luke." I was shocked into silence for a few beats. "You can't have Luke," I raised my voice defensively. The room suddenly grew cold and the air crackled. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Before I could say anything in response, I spotted movement at the floor of the closet. The white face was back, and I could see it more clearly from this vantage. It was the face of a child, but corrupted. This was not a child. The skin was sickly and thin. The eyes were sunken, almost desiccated. Dark circles around the black eyes. The lips were pale and bloodless and were curled into a sickening grin. It was the teeth that shook me the most. They were extremely small, thin, and jagged, as if each tooth had been broken intentionally to create this horrific and serrated maw. The chin rested directly on the floor, and the face looked directly at me with an anger such as I had never seen on the face of a child. It was a face of pure and utter rage. The face stared for a few seconds before the child creature began to move. No, not move, slither. With its limbs tight by its body, it slithered on its belly from the closet, all the while whispering in an increasingly sibilant voice, "Want Luke, want Luke." I backed up as far as I could until I was pressed against the headboard of Luke's tiny bed while the child snaked itself forward. Soon, the head and shoulders were no longer visible. I soon lost sight of its pointed white feet as it continued to glide blithely forward. The child was under the bed. I gripped the small mattress with both hands, not knowing what to do. My heart rate was through the roof, and beads of sweat had welled up on my forehead. The mattress jolted as the creature underneath grabbed onto the springs from below as if it were some deranged bat. The springs of the tiny mattress groaned from the extra weight. Slowly, I could feel the movement of the creature as it moved one hand and then the other. I could finally see tiny, jagged fingernails appear on the side of the bed. I've never understood the term paralyzed with fright. I always imagined that faced with a raging monster or axe murderer, I could easily find the willpower to get my ass in gear and move. But in this moment, The ability to move had absolutely abandoned me, and I was forced to watch in silent horror as the tiny dead hand was joined by another. I shut my eyes tight together, unwilling to have that horrible impersonation of a child burned into my retinas, and it was then that I heard it. John, come back to bed. This is ridiculous. The lights clicked on, and as I finally regained the use of my muscles to turn my head and open my eyes, the visage of my wife came into view. John, are you okay? I stared at her for a beat before I whipped back around to the side of the bed where the hands had grasped the mattress only moments before. Nothing. I released the breath I hadn't even realized I was holding. I'm fine, I croaked. All fine. She looked towards where I had been staring, not seeing anything. She continued, Come back to bed. I can't sleep without you. It gives me the creeps sleeping alone. She turned and left, her robe trailing behind her. I waited for a full minute, listening intently for any sound. All was quiet. Hesitantly, I lowered one foot and then the other to the floor. As I stood up, I fully expected to see a tiny, ragged hand reaching from below the darkness of the bed to grasp my ankle, but none came. I couldn't bring myself to look under the bed. The possibility of coming face to face with that hideous mockery of a child made me feel sick. Instead, I turned around, walked out the room, and shut the door behind me. Back in my own bedroom, with my wife sleeping peacefully beside me, I laid awake for hours, unable to get the face of the child from my mind. Unable to sleep, with the fear that I would awake with those small, cold hands wrapping around my throat and that snake-like voice whispering in the darkness. I must have drifted off because the next thing I knew it was morning. Sunlight shone through the partially open blinds, and birds chirped annoyingly outside the second-floor window. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes as I contemplated the prior evening. I couldn't let Luke stay in that room again. Not with that thing in there. No, I had to do something. I had to protect my son. I grabbed my laptop from where it lay gathering dust under my nightstand. The damn thing took what felt like hours to load. When I was finally able to get the dinosaur up and running, I loaded up my web browser and began my research. How to get rid of ghosts. The cursor blinked rapidly as if mocking me. I quickly backspaced and typed DIY exorcism. Okay, that was worse. Cleansing spirits from your house. That was better. I hit enter. The results were mixed, as was to be expected, but I finally found a few websites that gave me the information I needed. A few hours later, I had a plan, and I had a name. Reginald Ward. The little shit was named Reginald after all. It appeared that unbeknownst to me or my wife, our home had been the scene of the tragic death of an 8-year-old boy in 1907. Reginald Ward, according to what I had found online, had passed away from consumption, or tuberculosis, as it's more commonly referred to these days. As distressed as I was to learn that our new home was the scene of the horrific death of a child, I was even more distressed that said child was still in residence. I shuddered to think about what had befallen that child over the past decades to turn into this thing. My wife poked her head in the doorway, startling me out of my thoughts. What are you doing? You've been in here all morning. Nothing, I hedged, slowly closing the laptop screen so as not to make her suspicious. Just looking at stuff online. Okay. She drew out the word while giving me an odd look. Yep, she was definitely suspicious. I had to think quickly. Hey, you seem really stressed lately. What if I had my mom keep Luke for another few hours and you had a spa day? Her brows perked up. Seriously? I thought you said that spa days were the most useless way to spend your money. My smile was tight. It was true. I thought it was an entire waste of money. You literally got nothing out of it. But I had to get her out of the house somehow. She couldn't be here when I was performing the cleansing. Nonsense, you deserve it. Go ahead, give them a call and set it up. She couldn't help the grin that spread across her face. You don't have to twist my arm, she yelled as she turned and scurried downstairs to make the call. I stopped myself from mentally tallying how much this little outing would cost me and focused my attention back on the task at hand. I felt like I had a pretty good idea of how to get rid of Reggie. From what I read online, it was better to do the cleansing at night, but I didn't have that sort of time. I had to deal with this now. I made the quick call to my mom to see if she could keep Luke until that evening. After coordinating the time that she would drop him off, I quickly dressed and hurried downstairs. "Babe, I've got to run a few errands. I'll be back in a bit." "Okay, I'm headed to the spa in a half hour. They had a cancellation for a deluxe package at the last minute. Isn't that great?" I mentally groaned, but pasted a smile on my tense face. "That's great, honey. Have fun." I grabbed my keys and hurried out to my car. 45 minutes later, I walked back into the house carrying my assorted purchases. Claire's car was gone, so I didn't bother calling out for her. I was all alone. Well, not alone, exactly. I carried my purchases upstairs and opened the door to Luke's room. The red curtains were drawn, and the room seemed just as creepy as the night before. The day had turned rainy and dreary, so what little light came through the curtains gave the room that same dim glow as the previous night. I shuddered. Shutting the door, I emptied the bag of items on the floor. I paused to take stock of my haul. A small wrapped bundle of sticks I was told was called sage, a sage smudging wand, an abalone shell, a large feather, a container of coarse salt, and a Bible. I pulled up my phone and found the article I had been referencing earlier. I quickly reread the instructions, just to be sure I had everything correct. I first grabbed the salt and sprinkled a line across the bedroom door. This was supposedly to prevent the spirit from going into another part of the house during the cleansing. I didn't know if this would do shit, but I wasn't taking any chances. Next, I placed the abalone shell on top of the Bible. The Bible wasn't specifically in the instructions, but I figured it certainly couldn't hurt. Again, I was taking no chances. I walked over to the window and pulled back the red curtain. The rain was really coming down now. I opened the window slightly. The purpose of this, I had learned during my hurried research, was to give the spirit a pathway to leave the house. I didn't want to get rainwater all over my son's bedroom floor, so I only opened it a smidge. That should hopefully be enough. I pulled out a small lighter from my pocket and flicked it on. The small flame wavered in the semi-darkness of the small room. I picked up the smudge wand and lit the end. Red embers glowed as the stick caught fire. I quickly blew the open flame out, but the end of the smudge wand continued to slowly smolder, the red embers causing a fragrant, earthly smoke to emit from the end. I quickly dropped the smoldering stick into the abalone shell and picked it up along with the Bible. With my other hand, I grabbed a large feather. I was ready. I began to circle the room. With each step, I would use the feather to waft the smoke, blanketing the room in that thick, earthly smell. I continued to circle the room twice more, keeping silent as I wafted the smoke permeating the room. After 3 rounds, I spoke. "Reggie Ward, I command you in the name of God to leave this place. You are not welcome here, and you must leave." I paused momentarily in my path. Nothing happened. I continued again. "Reggie Ward, I command you in the name of God to leave this place. You are not welcome here, and you must leave." Still nothing. I started walking again. "Reggie Ward, in the name of God, I command you to leave." At first I thought there had still been no change. Slowly, I began to realize that there had, in fact, been a shift. I could no longer hear the rain. It was as if a thick layer of cotton had encased the room. The air was heavy and dense. I almost had the feeling of being underwater. I could hear my heartbeat increase. "Reggie, in the name of God, I command you to leave." On the word leave, I heard a thump from the closet. I paused in my pacing and stared over at the closet. The door was slightly ajar. Thick darkness enveloped the inside of the small closet. Without removing my eyes from the door, I started again. "Reggie, I command you in the name of God to leave this place." Another thump, and then, so low I could barely hear it, a hissing sound. not unlike breath whistling from between clenched teeth. A deep, long scratching shortly joined the hissing. "Reggie, I command you in the name of God to leave. You are not welcome here." The hissing became louder, and from the depths of the dark closet, a small, moaning voice. "Don't." The word was dragged out in a hissing rasp. "Reggie, you must leave now," I yelled towards the closet. "Don't." The hissing, breathy rasp was louder this time. From the darkness of the closet, those two horrible small gray hands emerged and clasped the door frame. "John." The sound of my name in that sibilant tongue literally made my skin crawl. "John, don't." I did not comply. "Reggie Ward, in the name of God, I command you to flee this house." The top of the small gray face joined his hands. The dark eyes had a wary look. I could have almost felt sorry for the creature, but I did not. Quieter this time, I again spoke. "Reggie, you must leave." Wisps of smoke began to emerge from the small hands, as if there were some great internal flame churning just beneath the skin. The entity did not appear to be able to speak any longer. Only that ragged, shrill hiss filled the air. I watched with trepidation as the hands fell abruptly to the ground. I could see the sharp nails gouging crescents into the wood floors as it laboriously began to drag its body forward out of the darkness of the closet. In the light of the storm, and in its weakened state, the creature was pitiful. Gray, mottled skin rippled as the smoke drifted almost casually from its surface. The thing lifted its large black eyes to me in supplication. With great effort, it spoke. "Don't." I did not have a chance to respond. The smoke enveloped the creature. It swept silently through the open window. I stood still for several seconds before my knees finally gave out. I had not even realized the toll the process had taken on me until this very moment. I wiped a thin layer of perspiration from my brow as I looked towards the empty closet. It was over. Later that evening, my wife and I sat on the couch, each nursing a glass of wine. I had not said much after she got home, and she, relaxed and zenned out after her day of pampering, had not pressed. I had not fully processed all that happened within the last 24 hours. Honestly, I wasn't sure I would ever process it. But to know my son was now safe was solace enough for me. I took a large swig of the sweet wine and leaned back into the sofa. The doorbell rang, and before I could even set down my glass, the hurried footfalls of my son rushing through the front hallway reached my ears. "Dad! Mom!" Luke rushed into the living room and launched himself at us. Chuckling, we hugged the rambunctious boy as he told us all about his adventures at Grandma's. He was talking so fast I could only make out every third word. From what I could tell, they had had a boatload of fun making cookies, playing games, and eating lots of junk food. My mom entered the room at a more sedate pace. "Sheesh, Luke, let them breathe, bud," she intoned. "I'm going to see Reggie. I can't wait to tell him about the new puzzle Grandma got me." Before I could say anything, he was already bounding up the stairs and giggling with excitement. My mom shook her head. He could not stop talking about his friend Reggie all weekend. She sat down on the edge of the chair next to the couch where Claire and I still lounged. "Well, I have a feeling we won't need to worry about Reggie anymore," I said. My wife gave me a sideways, curious glance, but I ignored it. "It was the strangest thing, though," my mother continued without acknowledging my statement. "When I asked him about Reggie, he said he was dead." "I know," said Claire. "Rather creepy, isn't it?" "Yes," my mother agreed. "I thought so as well. But he said that he was his friend and that Reggie protected him from the others." My gaze shot to my mom. "What did you say?" "Yeah, it kind of creeped me out too," she said. "He said that the others that lived in the attic were mean and tried to come down and hurt Luke. He said that Reggie wouldn't let them, that he protected him and kept him safe. When I tried to press him on it, he clammed up." A cold chill swept over my body. "The others?" Suddenly, the rasping voice of Reggie came back to me. "Want Luke want Luke. It was as if the floodgates opened in that moment, and I fully understood. Reggie didn't want Luke. He was trying to tell me that they wanted Luke. The others wanted Luke. Reggie had been trying to warn me. He had tried to scare me into leaving. He had tried to help me, to protect my son. I quickly set down my wine glass and snatched the blanket off my legs. Before I could fully stand up, the sound of my son's screams met my ears. Hello again, little Vickies. Thanks for listening. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe with the notification bell on. If you have a story of your own you'd like to share and possibly have read on the channel, send it to me at veronica45stories@gmail.com. Link is also in the description. Until next time, be good.